Okay guys, hello. Welcome to your assignment number 3 for Comp220 PHP. And basically this video, today we are going to create our assignment number 3. And the purpose of this assignment is for you to follow all the steps we are going to do today in order to create our PHP application that we called task list. And basically we are going to use only arrays. We are not going to connect to any MySQL session today, and the purposes of this assignment is for you guys to learn how to use arrays instead of using the MySQL information, which we already have done in past assignments and including the midterm. Now first of all, before we start, we're going to see how the application looks like, so we can start from or have an idea how the application will look like after we finish all the steps. So I already have my application up and running, and if I go to localhost and Comp220, I have my assignment 3 ready, and the application should start like this, all fresh. Now it only has one input that if we use it, if I put here, for example, do homework and hit a new task, all the tasks will be displayed in the top part of the application. And notice this specific section of the form appear after I click the button. So you have to be careful about that as well. Now, and also there is another section new in my form, that is this select element over here, and the select element is basically embedded with all the information held by this array over here. So basically all this element and this element is a list item or another list, I'm sorry, and this element is simple as select element, and both of them get all the information needed from the same array. So the other thing this application does is to make sure the task inputs is not empty. Alright, so if we click, notice that it's empty. I know this is only a placeholder, okay? This is not an actual input or an actual string that is inside the input. So this is only a placeholder. Whenever I click new task and it's empty, it will show me the error. An error. The new task cannot be empty. So notice as this section of the task list application actually show up after I click the insert new task whenever the input field was empty, right? So if I do another, let's say do groceries, okay, and insert this, the list or all the task list will be displayed in this part of the application. And notice this, now I have two elements inside my select. So if I select the do groceries, for example, and I want to delete it from my list, it will do it accordingly and only showing me the only item left, which is in this case do homework. Okay, sorry for the typo, I just noticed. Now first of all, let's go to start from the beginning. I will close this Google Chrome as well so we can start fresh, and I'm going to the SAM folder for a second. Okay, and I will erase this because we are going to start fresh, right? Now the first thing we're going to do is simple create. No, before we create the folder, let's go to even close the SAM so we can start all fresh. The first thing we're going to do is open the SAM folder or the SAM application. If you don't have it installed, please install with the newest version, and just go to the Google and put the SAMP control panel, and the first link probably that you will find is the SAMP application to be installed. Just download the newest version and install it into your computer. Okay, after you install it, if you haven't installed it already, that's fine. If you install it or did a new installation, you should have this SAMP control panel available into your applications. Okay, so if you click in the SAMP control panel, you will find something like this. You should be familiar by now with this control panel. However, it's important for me to start from fresh so we don't skip any single step for doing this application. So since we are, as I told you, I'm going to use only, or we are going to use only the Apache server. Okay, now for that I'm going to start in the application, and you will see basically the Apache server has started without any problem because it's in green, right? So I can close this and now go to the to my IDE. Okay, I'm using PHP Storm. This is my preferred IDE, but you can use and follow those steps using NetBeans as well. It will get the same result. Okay, now let's go to create a new project, and I have to look after the htdocs folder. Remember, in my case I'm saving this SAM folder inside a few folders inside my driver, but if you install it like using the standard options, you probably will be ending installing the application inside the C drive. Okay, so your SAMP folder will be located in C drive. Okay, so remember this because this is important for all your applications. You should know by now this. However, it's important to remind you. Now, the htdocs folder is where all the Apache will look for all the web applications. So if you want to create a new application and store it somewhere so Apache can find it, that's the folder that you should go. So just open it with your application, your IDE, and here I will create a new folder, okay, that I will call Comp220. Now I will select that one and notice the location of my project. Okay, this is important. Otherwise, you might be ending working in a wrong file or the wrong folder, and will create some confusion, especially if you are in a test or anything. So make sure you know exactly where you are working. Okay, now let's go to create it. It's giving me some tips. Let's go to close this. So basically what I have is just an empty folder, right? Inside there I will create a new directory and I will call it the assignment 3. Okay, perfect. Now I have my folder over here. Now basically probably the NetBeans, if you're using NetBeans, those steps are not quite exact or the same, but basically the main idea is the same. Okay, so just create a directory and that's it. Now here we're going to insert all of our files that we're going to create today, but before starting I have to let you know how this application works. Basically it has only 2 files. One file which is the index.php. That's where my application will start, and there is another PHP file called tasklist.php, and the task list is basically where all my format, like my forms and my HTML code, will be stored. Okay, now let's go to start with the index.php. Remember, we have to think index.php will be the first thing that will be loaded by the server whenever a user requests for this page. Okay, so putting that in mind, we need to use some tester in order to avoid errors inside my PHP code. Okay, remember, if we try to cast or we try to display a variable that is empty or that is not defined, we will get in an error telling us from PHP server telling us that the variable is in fact not defined or empty or whatever, doesn't exist. So in order to avoid those, we have to make some tests, okay, and give some values so whenever PHP looks for those values, can find it and don't throw those kind of errors. So let's go to start with the index.php file. Okay, so just call it index and click OK. Now, as I told you, we are going to start with the testing a few things regarding to my variables that I'm going to use inside this application. The first thing we are going to get, okay, we're going to get the task list from a post request. We're going to create this form later on in our task list.php file. That means basically we're going to create another form, okay, and this form will send by post using the method post. We'll send all the information we need to be loaded again, okay, basically with this index.php file, and to be displayed inside my page. Right, so the first variable we are going to use is the task list, which is basically the one that will be held in all my elements or items. And as you may be guessing, this will be my main array. Okay, now as we saw before, we're going to use the filter input function that allows me to request whether or either get and post method requests. Okay, in this case we are going to use the method post. Okay, it's indifferent if you want to use the method get, because it's for you is better. Be my guest, it's totally fine, but I don't like to having those long URL inside my web browser because it's kind of confusing, and in real life, to be honest, it's not like that. So anyway, so the type will be input post, and the variable that I'm going to look for is the task list. We are going to define it later on, but it's important for us to know already that the task list will be the variable name that we are going to be looking for inside the input, the post request. Okay, now there are a few things that are missing over here. The first thing is the filter default. The filter default is basically what is required. Is basically what is required by all the arrays in order to understand. I mean, PHP understand that what we are looking for is an array. And now, since we are working with the filter default, I'm planning to put now the filter require array. Now we are telling with this specific line, hey, this variable will be storing an array that is contented or is inside a variable called task list. Okay, this filter default, basically what it does is inside the post request, you won't find any specific array, but you will find all the information embedded over there with special characters. So what this filter default does is take those special characters and convert it in a way that PHP can understand it and convert it into an array. Right? That being said, now let's go to our first tester. Now the first tester will be an if. That's the best way to test our variables are going or being created properly. So I'm going to ask if the task list, okay, is equal to null, or in this case null. Okay, now remember the curly braces for my if, and if it's null, that means nothing. Probably is the first time we're running this page, so that means I have to create the task or initialize the task list so I can avoid any specific errors during my runtime. So I will tell task list is equal an array. Okay, awesome. Now I'm going to get the action variable from post. The same idea. Action is a variable that will be held in whether if we're trying to add a new task or delete a new task. You will understand this a little bit further on when we are creating our task list PHP. Okay. Now, for now, let's go to create our action variable, and the same as before, we are going to use the filter input. Okay, of course, will be an input post as before. Everything will be through the post method later on. Remember, later on. Now I'm going to look for the variable action. Okay, that means somewhere I have to store an input inside my form that has the name action. Okay, that is important to remember. Now let's go to initialize our errors array. Okay, now we are doing that simple like this, errors, because there are several errors, right? I mean, always try to create names or to assign names to your variable that makes sense to you. If it's an array of errors, that means it should be errors in plural. If you have a task list, because it's a list, so you don't need to put tasks list. It's understood that the task list, it should be an array and holding several task items. Okay, so always try to work in the best way for you to understand later on what you did. Okay, at the moment of your coding. Now let's go to initialize the same way, an array, simple as that, an empty array. Now let's go to start with the process over here. Okay, notice how I am using all the commands, so for you guys to see exactly what I'm trying to do with every single step. So it is important for you whenever you are doing a code to comment it. Even though somebody told me once the best code is the one that you don't need any comments, but I kind of disagree, because sometimes even you, when you came back later, like after a week or two, and try to remember what you did, probably you will spend a few minutes or probably an hour to understand what exactly you did, the main reason why you did it. So comments are for a reason. So try to abuse on them, if I may. So right now I'm going to create the switch statement, okay? And the switch statement will be looking for whatever the action value is. Okay, remember the switch. The switch, it will be some kind of if statement. What happens if this value or this value or this value is there? I'm going to perform this. So basically, if you are not familiar with the switch action, just look for the class material and you will find more information about it. Anyway, so remember in switch we have cases. The first case we are going to check if whenever action is add, I want the logic to be done like this. Okay, I'm going to create another variable. that is called task, new task. And the new task, it will be, guess what? A filter input. Because remember, if we are working with the add action, that means I'm going to insert an information posted by the user. So I have to send by the method post that information. Now I'm going to request the same idea, input post, okay, and I will be looking for a keyword or variable named task. So, and I will do another test here. If $new task, okay, or in this case, sorry, is empty, the new task, because I would like to check if the new task is empty. Remember, that's the only test I'm going to do today. Now, if this happens, I'm going to tell errors, which is my array. Remember, array, we can insert a new item in the errors array just by putting the square brackets empty. That means, or telling the PHP, hey, insert the error in the next index that is available. Now, that will be equal to, let's go to put here something like the new task cannot be empty. Awesome. Now, with that done, I'm going to tell this specific else, sorry, and this specific is if, let's say, it's not empty. So if it's not empty, that means it's something there, right? Now I will tell, well, tell the task list, remember the same idea, just use the square brackets, empty, so it will be stored in the next available index. And I will tell, well, this new task will be your new item. That's basically what it means. Okay, and after all my logic is done, don't forget to use the break. Break will tell in this switch statement that that's all the logic I want to do. If you forget to do so, all the logic will be performed until the end, even though it won't run, because remember, everything is a case, but you are going to waste resources because you will go through the whole code, even though it's not necessary. Okay, so that means if I put another case, whenever is delete, okay, the same idea. Now I'm going to if another tester, okay, oh no, well actually no, before getting this tester, I'm going to create a new variable that I will call task index. Okay, and the task index will be equally input, type what, input post, and I will be looking for the variable task ID. In this opportunity, remember, that means I may have a form that has the task ID name inside my post method. So I have to get a form with this specific name, otherwise this logic won't work. So we will see it further on in this video. Now I'm going to create my test. Okay, so in this opportunity I will ask if task index, right, is equal to null. Okay, well, or in this case, task index, okay, task index is equal to false. Why in this opportunity I put false? Because sometimes if you put a select option, using select options, you may find the error to include one item that is empty, in order to display choose item, right? So it's always recommended to use the equal false if you are working with select elements. Okay, even though unless you are totally sure you're not going to display the choose option, right? Now in this case, if it's null, I'm going to put here error list, my array list stored in the next index available, and I will store it the task cannot be deleted. Awesome. Now if it's not null, or either false or null, that means it has something. So I will onset. Remember, the onset is one function that is used to get the item specified out of the array. Okay, so basically I will tell which array I'm going to get the item from. Well, of course, my task list. Okay, and which item is that? Well, remember, we are going to post the task index for that purpose. So I will put here the task index in this case. So we have to make sure whenever we are posting the information, we are posting only task index, or the indexes for the task array. Alright, we will see how to do that anyway. So, and after that, I will put the task list equal to the array of values. Okay, the array values, which is a function that is telling me, well, get everything that is inside this specific array. This is only to make sure the task list is with the correct information, because sometimes it's better to make redundant operation, even though it's kind of not necessary in this case, but let's go to leave it just for saving purposes. And now don't forget about the break, because remember I told you, if you had like several cases, you don't want to go through all of them when a specific option has been already selected. Okay, all right, so after the switch I'm going to include, what I'm going to include, well, I'm going to include my index.php page, which I haven't created yet. Okay, now remember what the include does. Include does is like it's going to, as the name suggests, it will include after this PHP code or a script the index.php page. Oh, I'm sorry, in this case we want to include what? The task list PHP that we haven't created yet. Excuse me for the error, it's not index, it's the task list.php. Okay, so that's pretty much what we have to do with this file. Very simple, right? So right now let's go to create the task list.php. Okay, now to create the task list PHP, all we have to do is, in our folder, just right click on the folder and new PHP file. But in this case I'm not going to create a PHP file at once, because there is a little trick that I do all the time whenever I want to create a PHP file, but I need to get some HTML code inside of it. In order to do that, since whenever I create a PHP file, let's say testing, okay, and you see there is no HTML code created for me, so it's kind of time consuming starting from scratch. So in the specific IDE, all the IDEs, I believe they do this, whenever you set to create an index HTML, it will create the basic elements that you need to have inside your HTML page or your HTML file. So in this opportunity, let's go to delete this, and well, I think the best way to do it is just with the delete key, and I'm going to assign or create, sorry, an HTML file that I will call task list. But remember, the task list should be PHP, right? But look at the code that is already created for me by the IDE. It has like some kind of format or template that I can actually take advantage of, and I don't have to type all these things, and actually will help me to avoid errors. Now, since it's PHP, all I have to do is right click, okay, and refactor, and click the option rename. I'm pretty sure in your NetBeans IDE, if you're using that one, there is a very similar option over there available. So I'm going, instead of using HTML, I will write PHP, and I will put it click a refactor, and then it will create it. It created my task list PHP for me. So basically, see, there is no errors contented over there because it basically the PHP is HTML file, as you may know already. But the only difference is we are allowed to create PHP scripts on it. All right. So the first thing we have to do is in the task list PHP is to set our format for my bootstrap. How to do that? Well, let's go to our bootstrap page, which is the first link, and click and get started. You will see all the code that you need. We have done this in the past, but I'm just doing it again, so you maybe create a refresh of how to do it. Now the first thing we have to do is to put in, it says copy and paste the style sheet link into your head before all other style sheets to load our CSS. So I'm going to copy this, but I'm not going to paste it over here in my head section because I don't want to get a lot of information over there. I don't like to work like that. So for that reason, I will create a new directory that I will call style. Okay, and inside my style, I will create a new what? A PHP file. It could be an HTML file as well. It's the same. But in this case, let's go to create a PHP file. Okay, I will call it header. Okay. Now in this section, just erase everything and paste it. Oops, didn't copy. Okay, I'm going to copy this and paste whatever is supposed to be in the head section. So I'm going to enter these attributes of my link because I think it's better to work like this. Okay, it's more organized. Now in the style folder, I'm going to create another PHP file that I will call footer. Okay, and the footer is exactly where the other part of my code will be stored. So in this case, it's telling me I have to put it, the last thing I should put after or before closing my body should be this code over here. So I will copy this and paste it right here. So the same as before, I'm going to enter here just for organization purposes. Okay, you don't need to do this, but I think it's better to have a tidy and well organized code. Okay, see, I think I made a mistake adding this backslash. Yes, I did. Okay, now it seems like it to be more organized, right? Now there is another section here that it tells me to have a responsive viewport meta tag, so it should be also located in the head. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it here in my header section before the link, like this. So in this way my page will be exactly, or will be displayed accordingly to what the screen size of the user is using. Okay, now we can go back to our task list, and I can use those files that we just created. How to do that? Well, very simple. We just create a PHP script. Okay, always try to work like this, like opening the PHP script and closing it immediately, so you avoid this kind of weird errors like this. So doing this, you know exactly where you have to work. Okay, now in this case I'm going to require, I'm not going to include, I'm going to require, because require is quite different from include, because require is telling the code, okay, we need to embed some information from another file. That's what it does. Okay, and the specific information that I have to give here is the address of my file. So in this case will be style, because it's in the folder style. Okay, and the name of the file is header.php. Okay, perfect. Now it's telling me, according to Bootstrap information, everything contained in the folder file should be before closing the body tag. Well, that means it's exactly right here. So I'm going to put some space. I'm going to copy this to make it faster. Right? And instead of header, I'm going to use what? Footer. Perfect. Now, done this, we can start actually doing our code. I'm going to call this task list app for the title, just for, to make it more appealing. Now the first thing we are going to use is the div container, which is the main division for us to arrange things inside my page. It won't look like the covering the inputs will cover the whole page, but using containers, basically what it does is the Bootstrap creates some kind of a box inside your application, and it looks more appealing in that way. Now, just for formatting purposes. Now, the first thing we are going to do is to put the name of our application, task list. And here, just for formatting purposes, I'm going to add a line. Perfect. Now, inside there, let's go to create our first logic. So the first logic is, remember right now we're going to show the first thing we would like to show is the task errors, or the errors that might find the page whenever we're using the application. So in this case, I'm going to create my script, and I'm going to ask if count errors, okay, if count errors is greater than 0, then do something, right? So look at this, notice this. Look where I'm putting the closing curly braces. The curly braces is going to create another PHP script over here, and I will put my curly braces over here. So that means everything that is contained between those two guys over here will be created dynamically. So that means if I put something here, like for example errors, okay, it will be displayed only if errors has some values. Okay, So I always do, as a best practice, what I do is create dummy values sometimes to see if my page is working properly. So if you go back to index, and here whenever I declare the errors, I'm going to create a hello there. So it will be displayed, right? Errors, and just making sure the errors always have a value, so it can be shown in my page to make sure everything I'm doing over here in my task list.php is being done correctly. So let's see if it works. If we go back to our application localhost Comp220, this is my assignment 3, and there you go. It's displayed errors, because errors has values inside. If I just initialize my errors, that means I don't have any single value inside my errors, and if reloaded, errors will be out. That means it's working perfectly. So I'm going to leave just for, as I told you, for testing purposes. Okay, now, or instead of, I'm going to use error 1, error 2. Perfect. Now it should display perfectly. Okay, now going back to task list, I'm going to display all the errors inside. So I'm going to create another script, PHP script. Remember to close it every time. And I'm going to use this code for each. For each is a function that allows me to go through all the items inside of an array. Alright, so that means I'm going to look where I'm going to look those, or which array I'm going to use. Of course, errors as error. So that means error in this case, look at this case, is singular, right? That means I'm working with only one single error at once. Now I'm going to open my curly braces, and I'm going to use the same trick we used before, right? But in this case right here, I'm going to open my PHP script and close it, and I will close my curly braces. Okay, now in this opportunity, what I'm going to do, well, I'm going to create a div. Okay, in this case I'm going to display the a division that give me some kind of formatted alert. So for that, since I'm using Bootstrap for these purposes, if you go back to Bootstrap and go to content, components, the first component you're going to find is alerts. Those are the alerts that we're going to use for this purpose today. So since it's an error, I will use this alert, which is red and tells the user something has been, or has something is wrong immediately, right? I mean, since it's red, it tells you something is wrong immediately. So in this case, this is an alert, danger alert. So the danger alert is over here. All you have to do is copy this code and coming back to your application and paste it. Now, remember I told you, since it's inside those curly braces over here, this will be performed, or will be created every single time this for each is basically effective or true. So if errors have, let's say, 2 items, 2 values of division with the class alert, alert danger, role alert will be created inside your page. That is why it's very convenient using scripts, because the logic is very straightforward. Now in this case, what are we going to display inside this div? According to the example, thus the content will be inside that div. Okay, so as you may see, this is a danger alert. Check it out. It's exactly the content of this alert. So we have to put the content of whatever we want to display inside or between this div element. So in this case will be what? Echo. Sorry, don't forget to use your PHP script first. Close it immediately so you avoid weird errors. And here I'm going to echo, which is the function that allows me to display values of the variables, and I will display error, which is the error or the single item of the array. Remember, we are going to work with every single item but one by one. Okay, in this opportunity we're going to display error, so it doesn't matter how many items are there, they are going to do the same thing. So if we did it correctly, just save it and go back to your application to see if it's working perfectly. We have our two errors displayed accordingly. Now the other thing I'm going to add here is just a simple after this specific curly braces, I'm going to add an HR, which is basically a line. So after we got all the errors, a line will be displayed. So just for formatting purposes, and it make me like working more organized inside my application. So let's see how it looks. So you see the line over here created. So that means it's like a section, error section over here. Awesome. Now, so far so good. Now the next section that we are going to create is the task list section. So for that, remember to work always inside the container, okay? Otherwise, you will be having problems with the indentation or the margins of your elements. So let's go to create another script. Remember to close it all the time. Okay, and in this opportunity, I'm going to ask if count task list, okay, is greater than 0. That means is like if the task list is holding something, okay, do the following thing or the following logic. I'm going to use the same trick we did before, so we can create everything inside this specific section of a code. Okay, now if I have task, I will display the title tasks. Okay, it's important to keep the same format. Okay, if I put here an H3, the letters or the name will be displayed a little bit bigger, so it won't look very appealing to me. Anyway, so we are going to display all the tasks how? As a unordered list. So that means, remember, if the task list has something, this specific code will be shown. Otherwise, this won't be shown. That's the way to do or avoid a specific element inside your page to be shown if you don't want to. Okay? Or if something hasn't happened yet. Alright? In this opportunity, according to the information of my Bootstrap, Bootstrap also have input groups. Input groups basically are the list of your, list group. List group are basically the version of the list of the Bootstrap. So what I'm going to use is this one over here. So all I have to do is copy this code over here and paste it here. Of course, those list items are hard-coded. So that means I have to create some kind of a script over here. So this specific list item will be dynamically created. So I'm going to erase all of these guys. I don't need them, all of them. So all I need is just one. And I'm going to create my PHP script. And I will tell what? I will tell for each, same idea, right? for each what? In this case, we're talking about the task list, right? So I'm going to use task list as I'm going to call it task in this opportunity, and I'm going to use the same trick we did before. So remember, since the unordered list is created whenever the task list has more than one item or 0 items, I'm going to close it over here. Okay, perfect. Now this specific list item will be created every single time task list has one or more tasks or items. Okay, so in this case, the value of the list item, let's go to the information of Bootstrap to see how it looks. So basically it's just putting the information inside of this section, and we need to leave everything as it is. Okay, so sorry, in this case we don't want to use the active. So that means the only thing I have to add is right here my PHP script, and I'm going to display what? $task, of course. So going back to my application, it's giving me an error because why? Oh, I forgot to close this curly braces, you see? So I'm going to close it right here. Perfect. Now the same way we did with errors, I'm going to create here, since we are doing it for the first time, I'm very sure this task list will be created. So I'm going to create here a task 1. I'm going to put it as a hard-coded just to make sure everything is working as expected. Okay, now just save it everything and reload your application. Well, awesome, it's showing it perfectly. So far so good. Now let's go to continue over here. After this code, the next thing I'm going to do is, remember, I'm going to use another HR, which is a simple line that will be created by my HTML page and will look more appealing. So let's see how it looks. You see all the divisions are separated, very tidy, very clean, and very understandable right away. Now let's go to create the other section that goes over here. I guess it's the task. It's a perfect opportunity to create the task section. Okay, for that we're going to create our form. But form, if we go back to Bootstrap also have forms into probably component forms. We have forms as well in Bootstrap. Actually, it's a specialty of Bootstrap. So if you click over there, you have several options. Example like this one is already created for you. You have multiple select. You have a select also. So this is the one that we're going to use basically. But now let's go to copy the form, which is the normal form, and put it over here. Alright, now since we are not working with 2 inputs, we are just working with 1 input. I'm going to call this task. Okay, and the type of this is text. Class, I leave it as it is because that's for the Bootstrap purposes, and the ID, that's where I have to change. I'm going to, ID is for the label. Okay, the ID is for the label. So now I'm going to erase this because this is for cell phones and another specific devices. So I'm not going to be worried right now about that. but here in placeholder I'm going to put enter task, or just simple task. Remember in the example is just task, right? But there is one thing missing over here, which is the name. Remember, the name is the most important thing whenever we're working with post and get methods. If you forget to use the name, the form won't know what the name of the variable is. Okay, so basically what the content of this input is, whatever the content of this input is, will be the value for your variable. In this, that is why we have to use the attribute name to tell what the name of the variable is, and the input or the content of this input will be your value. Alright, so in this case, what do you guys think will be the name of the variable over here? Well, if we go back to index, we are looking for task. That's exactly the name we have to put, task. Remember here, our logic, it will be looking for a new task with a variable name task. That means I have to put here the name task, because that will be the task that I wanted to be added into my task list array. Alright, perfect. I'm going to erase this because I don't need it. I think it's enough information already for the user to know what the task is for. Alright, now, well, so far so good. And here, the only thing that we are missing is basically the little trick that we need to do in order to create or to work with our action, action variable. Remember here we are working with a $action variable, which is requested by the input post as well. Remember, I told you that means it should be a variable name called action inside your form whenever you are submitting it. So that means we have to create that that element with the name action as well. But in this case, we are going to do it hidden. Why hidden? Because in this case, the input shouldn't be recognized by the user, even though we are working with post. I always use the type hidden, so in case I'm using get, that specific value won't be shown either. Okay, and hidden is because we don't want the user to see something very strange with a value of action or anything over there. So the user doesn't care about that. All right, so that is why I don't want to be shown in my web page. So that is why it's typed hidden. So in this case, I'm going to put the value equal to what? Add. Why add? Because this is the form that I'm going to use to add a new task. Okay, so if we go back, remember action is the one that is evaluated by this switch, and we have two cases: whenever it's add and whenever it is deleted. Now, right now we're working with adding a new task. Okay, now the value will be add, and what will be the name for this specific input? Well, as I told you, will be my action. Perfect. That's all I have to do with this. So basically, whenever I am submitting this small form, I am having two variables: the variable task and the variable action. So that is why I'm having tasks over here, the variable task, and the variable action over here. Okay, so far so good. Now the next thing to do is a little trick that will help us to store the information inside the array. So this is necessary. This is necessary to input whatever the array is having, because remember one thing, whenever we submit, everything will be refreshed, right? Whenever we submit, all this variable over here will start from 0, unless I'm telling them, okay, look, there is an array that is coming from the previous session of this specific app. So what I'm doing here is storing or sending whatever is having the array in that moment the user is using the application, and sending it back to the index PHP, so it can be worked from that point, so you don't have to work from 0. If you don't do that, you will find yourself creating a new array and the new task will be posted over there, but you will be erasing the previous tasks that were stored in previous action using the application. Okay, so the idea is to keep doing in the same session, storing the whole information using the same array. So what I'm going to do is right now create a new PHP script. Okay, now I'm going to tell for each what? Task list as task as well. Okay, remember to open the curly braces and do the same trick we did before. Okay, oops, perfect. Now we have this space to work with. Now in this case I'm going to create another input which will be hidden as well, because that's only for my arrangement purposes. The user doesn't need to see this information anytime. Now the name of this input will be task list, but look at this, I'm using an array. So basically what I'm going to submit is an array. That is why we use this variable over here and use the filter default, so all the specific characters will be considered for creating my array. And I'm putting the options to tell PHP, expect an array, and treat this variable as an array. That is why I have to use the option filter require array and filter default. Alright, that being said, which variable or which value do you think we have to use? Well, the value for this case will be PHP script, of course. Okay, and in this case we're going to display over here. Remember, the display is not only for displaying the values inside my HTML, but to giving values whenever we need it inside an attribute of my elements. That is why I have to use echo over here. If I don't, the HTML won't see anything from here. Remember, the script will be performed, and the only result that you will get is nothing if we don't use the echo expression. All right, Now, with that being said, I'm going to use the function HTML special characters that will consider all the characters inside my specific value of a task. So everything inside there will be treated as a string. Okay, that is important to notice. So if the user put, let's say, a backslash or underscore or whatever, will be considered as a string, so will be stored without any problem. Remember to use the double quotation over here. If you don't do that, you will be having errors, because the result of this specific PHP script won't be inside a double quote, and according to the definition of the attributes, all the attributes must have double quotes, as we see in every single example of our elements. Okay, that is important. Now inside there, I'm going to display what? The task, of course. So basically what I'm doing over here is creating an input, as many as the task list items are, and I'm giving the value of every single of them according to every single of the item contained in my array task list. Perfect. Now I think this is pretty much what we have to do here, and yes, I think we are done. Let me check for a second, and yeah, basically is all we have to do here. And okay, perfect. Now we have this input, over here. Now the next thing to do is, let's check if it works. Okay, let's check if it works. So I'm going to reload over here. Okay, there you go. Okay, there is something missing over here in my bottom, so I'm going to make this task. We don't want to display email address here, we want to display task, right? And the style would be equal to font weight bold. Yeah, just to, to make up to style purposes. Perfect. Now okay, so far so good. What else we need here? Type submit. Actually, this is not a button, this should be an input. That is why I'm having that error. And the input doesn't work like this. The value of this guy should be the value should be insert task. Let's see if it works. Oh, it seems like something is missing here. Let me check what is wrong. Okay, it's in here. Check. This is strange. Let me check if it's an error of the division. Probably is an error of the division, I don't know. Okay, now my button is over there, but it's strange. Oh, I see why. I think. Now, if I don't put over here, okay, it seems like my inputs are affecting me in some way. Now, all I want to do is to create, let's see if I put in this little guy over here inside a div. Okay, going to put it inside form group, and those two bad guys over here. And let's go to order a little bit. Check. Yep, that it worked. Probably, in a way, the input, since it's an input. Oh, I see. Actually, I forgot to close this guy. You see, that is why it was having me an error. That's perfect. Okay, that's good. Now, that being said, now it's working perfectly, and I'm going to use, I don't like that blue color over there, so I will put it gray, which is nice and tidy. Now it's working so far so good. And now let's go to create the last form of my page. And there is one thing that we are missing over here. I'm going to create the action right now, and we can do this in two ways. We can either choose using index.php, which is the best way to do it. And remember the method. The method should be equal to what? Post. We've been using the post so far. Now let's see, I think it's already done to be tested. Let's see if it works. If I put here 1, 2, 3, 4, whoops, 1, 2, 3, 4, there you go. I got my 1, 2, 3, 4 displayed. Now it's working perfectly so far. Alright, now let's go to the other form that will help me to delete whatever I have inside. And let's go to check also if the empty is working. Yep, it's working perfectly as well. Awesome. Now let's go back to our code and let's go to create another form. The same thing. I'm going to copy this because this already has my my logic that I want. And yeah. So right now is the same thing, is post, and instead of task I'm going to put here delete task, or let's go to call it task ID. Remember one thing, remember we need to use what? We need to use a select for this section instead of a simple input. So I'm going to erase this guy, but before erasing it, let's go back to our bootstrap. Let's go to find a select. Since select is not very, I don't exactly know what is that. The best way to find elements is like typing whatever element you want to search for and just click enter, and it's, you see, it's like inside input group, which is not very it's not like very standard, or it's not easy to find if you are not familiar with this page. So in this case I'm going to use these shoes. Okay, also in form we have another example, but let's go, since we are here, let's go to take this example. So I'm going to copy this one, which is the first one, and going back to my page and paste it over here. Okay, awesome. So I'm not going to put any label, but I'm going to use this label. Alright, so in this case I'm going to call this guy task ID, and remember what name should be? Task ID, because if we go back we are looking for a task ID over here whenever the case is delete. So we have our name. Remember the choose option option I was talking about. This is the one that I'm talking about. See, there is no value selected to there. So if the user leave the choose option, a false value will be generated. That is why we need to put here false every time we are working with a select element, right? But since we're not working with that, I can erase it safely, and I'm not going to need the three options. So remember, this is gonna be a PHP perform, right? So the select in this case will be the one that I'm going to need. Okay. Now, okay, I think one thing is missing, but we can take care of that later. Okay. Alright, now let's go to work with this first. The task, the form for the task list. Check one thing. Okay, so the form that we're going to use here, what I'm going to do right now is to check if I'm going to populate whatever is inside my task list and put it into the option, right? So for doing that, remember what I want to do is to create the these specific elements whenever the task list has something to show. So for doing that, I can create my PHP. So in fact, I'm going to erase this. Don't need this input anymore. And I'm going to, since this input is there as well, so I'm going to actually create the PHP code since here. Why? Because remember, I don't want to display this if I don't have anything to show. So I'm going to call, as we did over here, if the task list is greater than 0, so I can copy this. Okay, and I will close my PHP code over here. Okay, so remember to close the curly braces as well, because everything has to be contented right here. So whenever the task list has something inside, all this group of coding will be shown in your page. Otherwise, it won't show anything. So let's see if it works. Okay, perfectly, so far so good. So I have a little problem over here because of the formatting. So let's go to solve that problem right now. And I have that problem because I'm not task ID, the label is over here, that's perfect. Probably if I leave this guy over here inside the label, it will work perfectly. Okay, so the ID is task ID, that would be delete task. Okay, let's see now. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, the other thing that I want to show over here is the our HR division. Okay, perfect. Now let's see. Perfect. Now it's showing perfectly as I wanted. Now insert task. Let's go to change the value of this button. That will be delete task. Perfect. Now let's go back to our code to check if everything is done. Awesome. Now let's go to work with this select. Now since we are showing this because task list has something and right now is hard coded, right? So I'm going to create these options over here, and since we already know task list will have something inside, right? So I'm going to create my PHP code over here. Remember to open and close your script. And right now I'm going to use what? The for each. And actually I can copy this code over here. It's exactly the same idea. Or not this one. Let's go to copy this one. It's exactly the same idea, right? So instead of using that list item over here, I'm going to use what? The option. And the value will be who? Oh, but there is an error over here that right now we cannot use for each because, well, it's not like we can't. We can, but the easiest way to do this, we're going to use the for instead, because we want to know exactly what index of the item we are showing. So for that, I'm going to create a variable I equal to 0, and this I will be keeping doing this until task list dot count. Count the task list, and let's go to erase this, and I'm going to increment one step at a time. So what I'm doing is doing exactly as a for each, like here, but in this case I need the index. So if you need the index to work with, that's the way to do it. Okay, so what we're going to do, the first value that we're going to display over here is the index, right? So that will be the echo $I. Okay, so whenever this value is changing, it will give in the value of my option. Now what am I going to display to the user? But this is very simple. I'm going to show to the user the task list, right? In this case, task list, but the index, exactly the index that I want to show. So basically what I'm doing over here is giving it the value of the index and putting inside this name over here. So whatever the user selects to be deleted will be sent, the index will be sent using this specific script over here, and the user will know what task we are talking about because we are going to display the value of that specific index. So let's go to see if it works. Before that, let's remember we have to change here to delete, because delete is the action over here that this switch is looking for. Okay, is the delete action value that this switch section is looking for. So let's go to see if it works. I have the task ID, we have the input, Okay, and look at this. I'm leaving the trick of the array as well, because remember, we have to populate at the same time those two arrays, because whenever we are submitting, we would like to submit whatever is inside that array at the moment. Either the user is adding one value or erasing one value. So let's see if it works. So right now I'm displaying test 1, test 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing here. So if I want to delete 1, 2, 3, 4, it's working exactly as expected. Okay, I think, guys, is almost done. The only thing we are missing to do is erase this dummy information that we have created for testing purposes only. And let's see. So we have, let's go to a start from the beginning. Okay, looks good. Now let's go to do homework. Insert task. The task is displaying, and I have here my do homework. What if I leave it empty? The new task cannot be empty. All my information is displayed, and I'll go to put groceries, for example. Groceries. Insert task. Awesome. Now it seems like, okay, let's go to delete do homework, which is the last thing we have to check. And do grocery is displaying exactly. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this application as I did creating it, and I hope you can recreate the whole thing without any problem. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Bye bye.